Look, don't come at me for the title of this video. It literally is a direct quote from the latest Team Liquid video, which if you have never watched like cut style videos where they do healthy debates and put people with completely opposed positions to each other in the same room and force them to talk over everything, welcome. It's fun. Team Liquid took a massive step and did this hour-long video, which honestly was one of my favorite pieces of content that any NA org has put out in a while. But there's one point in particular that I actually want to argue on behalf of the Redders, just because I want to challenge myself a bit, but also because it's a topic that is near and dear to this channel, and that is business and making money. So let's cut to the TL video. If you want to see the full video with all the other takes, it's an hour long. The link to that video is in the description down below. I am only going to use portions of that video and react to them here, well, for a second time, because obviously I've seen this entire video once, just to give you additional context.
Co-streaming is inherently bad for League of Legends.
I feel like co-streaming actually brings in a lot more viewers as opposed to just the general League of Legends broadcast. Captain Flowers, Azael, all those people. It's really easy for them to actually like explain the game and everything. But when I watch it myself, it's I love watching Dom. I feel like he breaks down the game in a lot more analytical of a view.
If you would rather watch it with Dom, then there was an onus on Riot Games to go offer Dom a salary to make him be on the main broadcast.
So the first person here, as you can tell, goes for the angle of, oh, the personalities that I want to watch on co-streams are simply not going to be on broadcast, to which, fair point to a certain extent. Riot hasn't brought them in, and I agree entirely with Spawn's counter that he gives of, yes, Riot had a responsibility to bring these people in, to make them the faces of the main broadcast. And for the longest time, that was it. I mean, think of all the broadcast talent that we have right now. Most of them former pro players, barring like I think the play-by-play casters were typically the ones that were not former players. Think Captain Flowers. Freak, I don't think was a pro player. I think he was high elo, but he was never pro. Quick Shot, same thing. I don't think he was. But a lot of your analysts, for the longest time, were these former pro players that they brought on broadcast to help break things down and explain not only the fandom, but the individual plays. Exactly what Dom, former pro player, Cadril, former pro player, LS, former like coach, but even then, like he was just very high elo and explaining things to people for a long period of time. Double F, the most notable North American player, obviously famous player, turned co-streamer. None of these people brought on broadcast. Now, why? Well, the answer partially is because some pro players simply do not do as well on the main broadcast in that setting in like this hyper professional manner. Certain players just simply aren't cut out for that. But we've seen Cadril, for example, probably the best example of them all, started on broadcast before going to his own co-stream. So we know that at least a good bit of the talent probably can make that swap. Plus, they've been getting interviews for years, so yeah, inherently, they should be fine to go on the broadcast itself. But why don't they? Well, honestly, that's on Riot for not cycling through talent. I don't know any behind the scenes of this, but I'd be curious to know like whether Riot would have gone out of their way, say like Double Lift and made it a point of like, hey, I want to be on broadcast consistently. Would they have let them? But obviously, I don't think Double Lift had that urge. There were a few players that were, especially from the LEC. You've seen Broxel on the broadcast. You've seen Cadril, who went from playing to immediately getting his time on air. So people then go to their own individual streams. Fine. But here's where the problem comes in.
But my gut feeling is that the 100,000 people that watch Cadril used to watch the main broadcast and now don't watch the main broadcast, which is terrible for sponsorship. All Cadril does is screech over every single ad roll being played. Like, I don't even know how Riot is monetizing this shit anymore. And he used to be on the broadcast and left the broadcast because co-streaming was more popular. You're literally proving my point that we are missing the S-tier talent off the Riot game broadcast.
And that's where this argument falls apart on the Redders' behalf, as well as for every other person that came up to talk to Spawn during this segment. Because Spawn validly points out that you are not going to be able to monetize co-streamers in the same way that you can your main centralized broadcast whenever everybody is there and being subjected to the same ad rolls. We have seen this for years on co-streams where for the longest time, I mean, people would just pull up other games and shit in between, they cover up the ads, they do everything like that. We've come a long way from co-streaming at its initial jump to what are now standard practices for it. But there's no denying that sponsors are not getting their money when it comes to this. So where does everything go then? Well, realistically, the money goes in the pockets of the co-streamers, assuming they can land their own deals because the viewership's for them. While Riot can absolutely sell sponsorship still and will use the co-streaming numbers with them, the reality is the second a sponsor clicks into that at all, they're going to realize, okay, wait a minute, how many of these people are actually paying attention to the ads midway through, which is already a fraction of the percentage, but then you have Cadril talking over them anyways, and it's like, that's going to hurt sponsorship revenue pretty severely. So here's where I think you can provide an interesting argument to counter Spawn. And that comes in the fact that I'm going to claim that Riot has done a terrible job and has neglected in their responsibility to grow the broadcast and grow sponsorships to the point where it's actually better off in teams' hands, but teams just simply don't know how to monetize that yet. It's one of the positive things that I actually enjoyed about the LEC for a while there, and one of the reasons why I was happy that Cadril was actually with Fnatic last year, although he's on his own now, which creates its own separate individual issue. But the financial stability of the scene has been a problem for a long period of time. Part of that is because Riot obviously forced franchising, which then drove up salary payments, which is entirely on the teams. Absolutely not disagreeing with that in any way, shape, or form. Salary should have been lower from the jump. They should have been a proportion of revenue. We've been over this a billion times on the channel. But one of the biggest things missing was a media rights deal. Whenever you had this centralized hub broadcast, which was the case all the way up through, 2020-ish, whenever COVID happened, there were no media rights that were ever sold from Riot. So money from the ecosystem only came in the form of sponsorships, which by all means, they probably got a good bit, and some of that was distributed down to teams, sure. But co-streamers are proving the point that, okay, maybe Riot hasn't been doing the best job of making the most amount of money from this. Especially when now they're downsizing leagues, downsizing everything around the space because it's not financially sustainable. A lot of that because of their own decision to allow co-streamers to take over, which did impact everything else. But my argument from the team side would be, I'm going to be able to do a better job of driving my viewership and bottom line than Riot will. Now, this is a future-looking projection because obviously every team, as we know it in the current ecosystem, has done a piss poor job other than MCOY and K-Corp, which are centered around creators themselves. But there's a clear world using Team Liquid's organization themselves to have an official broadcast in the same way that Scump does his watch party, which is a centralized hub for Team Liquid fans that help you sell your own merch, your own sponsorships, everything to you, the org. That way you cut out the middleman of Riot, which inherently is not good for Riot, but it does finally give some power to the teams, which they've been missing for a bit. But in order to do that, you need a co-streamer that's going to do it consistently and put out the same quality level that we see from Scump and Optic, because they are kind of honestly the only good example of co-streaming in my opinion. I don't know if anybody else has really done an effective job of translating fans that were taken away from the main broadcast, put into this co-stream, but actually are fans of that team, but also the product as a whole. But understandably, it is a central hub for Optic gaming fans. But they're always being pitched merch, sponsors that Optic has, and ways for them to monetize that otherwise Riot doesn't do, because Riot's only pitching their particular sponsors. There are no team skins to sell in this at all. Like, there's no product that you're pushing team fandom. You're just pushing fandom for League of Legends as a whole. And if the teams provide interesting stories, fine. But even then, we haven't really seen that as much other than from a very select few from the top. At least this way, with a co-streaming model, there is a chance that smaller people can work their way up without getting the airtime and talking points that historically the big heads have had whenever it is one centralized broadcast hub. One of the points that I think every single person in this video tried to make and kind of failed because they didn't realize the point behind it, and shout out to Miss Chim Chim for being a part of this. I think she, again, as Spawn points out, is an exception rather than a rule when it comes to co-streaming, because she does bring a unique audience. If you decide to leave at any given point in time, or just get tired of League or tired of this, you basically took an audience away from the central hub that wanted to come watch you, and they stay following you as a creator, and it all comes down to you and your decisions. That's not necessarily a problem. It's not selfish in a bad way, but like, all the attention does go on you. Get your bread. By all means, make your money. Spawn points out in the video that it went from Cadril being paid, say, I don't know the exact numbers that he was making on LEC broadcast, but say $300,000 of salary to be on the broadcast versus the now millions that he is making independently by co-streaming. It is great for his brand individually. But yes, that part is a problem for LoL, Esports, and League as a whole. So actually, despite trying to argue that the team side is there and trying to put my best foot forward, I really do agree with Spawn that I think co-streaming is bad for League as a whole. And I've been of that opinion since 2021. I got a lot of shit back when for saying that whenever Doublelift was like the face of co-streaming. I made that my point. People were not happy with it. And that take has kind of aged quite well, if I'm being honest. Even if we're in a situation now where I don't think you can reverse course. Co-streaming is here to stay. So it is on teams to make sure that they can put the best product out there and monetize the options available to them. But very few have gotten that right, especially in North America. So from that front, yeah, I would say co-streaming has definitely hurt NA more than any other region. It's funny, we've talked about like my dreams and shit like that, and I'll be candid with you here for a moment. There was a time where I was like, oh, it would be fun to be on broadcast and be like on-air talent, but the reality is I don't think I'm smart enough to in a way that is actually meaningful for the LCS broadcast itself. The ecosystem as it stands now is more beneficial to my type of content creation and me as a creator than it ever has been before. And that should be a message to every like low elo, I mean, I'm gold right now. So yeah, I am like lower elo or average at minimum. Like this should be a message to you all that right now is like the perfect time to dip your toe in content creation. Because as the broadcast becomes decentralized, if you can find your foothold in fandom, that is an avenue to build yourself up. Now, if you're going the team side like me, it eventually becomes imperative that the team notices you and you kind of blend your way in there. But there's no longer this requirement that like the end all be all dream of like a creator is to be on broadcast, even though realistically, that's what it should be. Because 2018 me saw the LCS broadcast and was like, damn, that'd be kind of fun to be on. And while that dream is still alive to a certain extent and always kind of will be, I'm also not willing to move out to LA. Because last time I checked, I'm watching this video, everything once again, always out in Los Angeles. If you want to chase a career on film, realistically, it is out there. But do you know what I can't do out in LA? I can't fill up Madison Square Garden with League fans. So that's it. Kind of a down week this week. Not really all that much going on. I've got one more kind of off-topic-ish video coming tomorrow. And then next week, we kick into full gear back into LoL Esports. The LPL is ongoing right now, but the LEC kicks off this upcoming weekend and the LTA next weekend. Same thing for the LCK. So we'll be back to normal LoL Esports content in a bit. But in the downtime, Team Liquid put out a phenomenal video. And I wanted to talk about it because it was a ton of fun and just give like some random thoughts back. So let me know if you enjoyed this kind of looser style video. If not, don't worry. Next week we'll be back. But this was fun. More teams should do content like Team Liquid. That shit was amazing.